It was a foggy night in London, the kind of night where the streetlights barely pierced through the mist. Detective Samuel Gray stood in front of an old mansion, its dark, looming structure casting eerie shadows on the cobblestone streets. The mansion, known as Tudor House, had a reputation for being haunted, and the locals whispered stories of strange happenings there for centuries. Gray wasn't one for superstition, though. He was a man of facts, a man who trusted his instincts and his keen eye for details. That night, he'd been called to investigate a series of mysterious events at the mansion. A renowned historian, Professor Albert Rutherford, had been found dead in his study, a place where he had spent most of his life researching the Tudor era. His death wasn't just a simple heart attack or accident. It was something more sinister. When Gray entered the mansion, the housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, greeted him. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she led him to the study. "It's horrible, Detective," she whispered. The professor was a kind man, but someone did this to him. The door was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of a struggle. Gray nodded thoughtfully as they reached the study door. He noticed the faint smell of dust in the air, a scent that seemed to have settled in the mansion long ago. The room was large and filled with towering bookshelves lined with ancient texts. At the center of the room lay Professor Rutherford's lifeless body, slumped over his desk, a strange expression on his face. His hand clutched a small, intricately carved box, which seemed out of place in the otherwise scholarly environment. Did anyone else hear or see anything unusual? Gray asked as he examined the professor's body. Mrs. Winters shook her head. No, Detective. The house was quiet. But the professor had been working on something important. He was obsessed with it. Gray turned his attention to the box in the professor's hand. It was delicate, made of dark wood with silver inlays, and appeared to have a hidden mechanism. After carefully prying it open, Gray found a small, faded note inside. The handwriting was shaky, as though written in haste. The Tudor curse is real. They're coming for me. A chill ran down his spine. Was this just the ramblings of an old man, or had Professor Rutherford uncovered something that someone wanted to keep hidden? As he looked around the room, Gray noticed a map of Tudor-era London pinned to the wall. A particular location on the map seemed to be circled repeatedly, with notes scribbled around it. Gray stepped closer to examine the map. It pointed to a hidden chamber beneath the mansion. "I think I've found what the professor was investigating," Gray said, turning to Mrs. Winters. "This map leads to something hidden beneath the house. We need to find it." The housekeeper's face went pale. "That room. It's forbidden. No one goes there. Not since the professor's grandfather." "Why?" Gray pressed, his curiosity growing. Mrs. Winters hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "The legend says that the Tudor family buried their darkest secrets in that room. A curse was placed on it to protect the treasure. The professor always laughed at it, but he had started to believe in it recently." "Then we'd better make sure we uncover whatever is down there," Gray said firmly. The two of them descended into the basement, the stone steps creaking under their weight. The air grew colder the further they went, and a sense of unease settled over Gray. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a thick wooden door. Gray didn't need to ask Mrs. Winters. She had already stopped at the foot of the stairs, too afraid to go any further. With a push, the door creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. Dust filled the air, and cobwebs clung to the walls. In the center of the room sat an old chest, covered in dark stains. The room felt oppressive, as though it had been untouched for centuries. Gray carefully approached the chest and opened it. Inside, he found a collection of old scrolls, each one detailing the history of the Tudor family. But as he dug deeper, his hand brushed against something cold and metallic. He pulled out a tarnished golden dagger, its hilt adorned with strange symbols. Suddenly, the room seemed to grow even colder, and a voice echoed through the chamber. "You shouldn't have come here, detective." Gray spun around, his heart racing. Standing in the doorway was a figure cloaked in shadows. The figure stepped forward, and the dim light revealed the face of a man Gray recognized, Professor Rutherford's long-lost brother, Thomas. "I thought you were dead," Gray said, his voice steady despite the sudden tension. Thomas smirked. "Everyone thought I was. But I've been watching, waiting. My brother was getting too close to the truth. The curse, the treasure. It was never meant to be found. You killed him, didn't you?" Gray accused. Thomas's smile faded, replaced with a cold, calculating expression. He was too curious, too obsessed. "You see, detective, the Tudor family wasn't just rich. They were powerful, and the treasure in this room, it was meant to stay hidden. Curse was placed to protect it, and now that you've found it, the curse will take its toll." Suddenly, the chest slammed shut, and the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. Gray could feel the air thickening, as though something ancient and vengeful was awakening. Thomas stepped back, a wicked gleam in his eye. "The curse is real, detective, and now you're part of it." With that, the door slammed shut behind Gray, trapping him in the chamber. The shadows grew, and the coldness seeped deeper into his bones. But Gray wasn't one to panic. He would find a way out. After all, this was just another mystery to solve.